What's up, you guys? This is Scott and I'm back with another video. The drum machine stuff I've been doing for the last few weeks is not actually my main thing that I do. I actually got started in electronic music through DJing and spinning records, and so this week that's what we're going to talk about. There's a lot to talk about when it comes to DJing, and there's a lot to debate about different styles of doing things and different technologies being used and which is better and which is not. But that's not what we're going to talk about today. Today, I just want to get you introduced to this. In case maybe you haven't ever spun records before, I just wanted to make this and show you what I enjoy about it and what I think is so cool about spinning records, as opposed to, I've got like a MIDI controller and I do use that sometimes, but I prefer to spin records because it's so much more fun, and I'll tell you in this video why I think it's more fun. To me, spinning records is like a game, and it's a fairly simple seeming game, but what's happening is actually very complicated. What I'm talking about is just the synchronization of two songs to one another. The music that I spin is typically techno or house, and the reason I think it's so fun is because it's a constant beat. It's always going doom-ts, 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 doom. Okay, so if this record's always doing that, and this record's always doing that, and when they're synchronized, they can stay hitting at the same time because they're both going the same speed and they're lined up. I'll give you an example of this real quick, but before I do, I want to explain that the reason that is really cool is because it's hard to do, and it's hard to keep them lined up perfectly. So what you have to end up doing is making these very small adjustments to alter the speed at which the two are going, because this one can very easily get out of sync with this one, and then you've got, instead of a smooth mix where you just hear one constant beat, they start to train wreck on each other, and they start, since they're at slightly different BPMs, one beat starts happening slightly before the other and you start to hear it gallop. It's just a very subtle phasing at first. It just makes the kick drum and some of the other sounds start to sound just a little bit more distorted and or a little bit different. The kick drum typically has a lot less oomph when they're just slightly mismatched. I'm talking about like when the bass drums just aren't lining up perfectly. Sorry about it, I've got paint all over my hand. What I'll do is, these are at 2 different BPM, and without matching this one to this one, you'll see that they will just be a mess. It'll go through phases where it actually does sound kind of okay, just coincidentally, but then the rest of the time it's just this. See, that's totally off. It sounds like absolute. So what a DJ does, and this is what I would be hearing in the headphones. I usually wouldn't be playing this record out while this one is playing. I would be listening to this in the headphones. I want you to be able to hear what I'm doing. So right now I'm cueing the record. I've got the first beat lined up. You can hear a repeating beat of 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4, 1. That 1 that I just counted is what I've got hold of right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4. Now I've got to keep this one. I had to speed this one up a lot. Now it needs to be slowed down. Now I'd be doing this in the headphones so that you don't have to hear this. But now I've got it pretty well synchronized, and you'll hear that when this one changes, this one should change too. But you've got to constantly keep micro-adjusting these things, otherwise they will go off. Watch, I won't touch it now. It's staying on pretty good, but this one's actually pulling ahead. This one's slightly faster. that needs to be slowed down. It's taking like every bit of control I have to just keep this going so you can hear this demo. But it just needs to be slowed down a little bit, and then it'll line right back up and it'll sound like one song again. See how much better that is? So that's what's fun about it, is that when you've got the headphones on, you prepare your song and try to make it come in as smoothly as possible, and introduce it as though it's part of this song. The reason I wanted to show you guys that is because a lot of DJs performing nowadays, they're not doing this. And I think they're really robbing themselves and robbing you of one of the most exciting and fun aspects of DJing, which is that constant balancing act. When a guy starts to lose control of it, you can hear it happen and everybody's like, oh. What usually happens, especially with beginners, is when they're doing this, okay, what usually happens is you make the wrong call. That right now needs to be sped up a little. Now it needs to be slowed down. But what happens is if you accidentally speed it up when it needs to be slowed down, it gets way more off, way quicker. Anyway, my point is that the more you practice this, the better you get at it. But the fun part about that is when you are really using skill to do this, instead of having a computer automatically sync it or using your eyes to watch a grid and line the grid lines up, when you're actually using your own mind and your ears to do this, you're only as good as the amount of practice that you've had. There are people who start doing this and they're just freakishly good at it right away. But for the majority of us, it takes about a year, I would say, to acquire this skill, unless maybe you've got experience with digital DJing and it gives you an advantage. I don't know. But for me, it took a very long time, because this was, I did this back in the 90s when nobody really was around. YouTube wasn't around to teach myself how to do it. So I was just kind of winging it, and I had to do this over and over and over and over and over until I eventually was able to beat match. So now I'll just real quick mix these in using the headphones and show you what a difference it makes. I'll be sneaky about it and try to we'll just start this track. I'll try to bring this record into this without it being very obvious that I'm mixing. So first I have to cue the record, which involves listening to it in the headphones while that one's playing out there. And in my headphones I can hear faintly what you hear, because I've got this knob right here programmed to turn to the position where I just barely hear that bleeding through into my headphones, and then I hear mostly this record. sounded much better is because I've got an advantage over you as the DJ. I'm wearing the headphones so I can hear this track and I know what to expect, and I can adjust levels of things, bring this one in subtly enough that while this one's playing, it just sounds like it's all one piece, but really they sound completely different. This one's going baneer, baneer, baneer. That one's like, If I'm doing too much jerking around and I'm not paying attention to my mix, it'll fall apart and embarrass me in front of everyone. But I deserve that because I was being a showboat. You see how now modern day with auto sync and everything, people can just showboat, you know, pretend they're really getting artistic with their knobs, but the only thing that actually matters is that they're keeping the beat together. But if the computer's keeping track of that, what are they doing? That is what I find so enjoyable about spinning records. It's that constant balancing act that you're doing when you're getting their pitches right. You can do the same thing on Serato or on a computer-aided setup of whatever kind, Tractor or virtual DJ or whatever. But the reason this is more fun than that is that there isn't all of the visual cues interfering with it, and you're purely doing it with your ears, and you have to really engage your mind in a different way than what it's used to. To keep them locked together, you have to really concentrate and you have to listen in a whole different way. It involves, I would assume, both halves of your brain in different ways or something. There's something going on there neurologically that when it happens, it's very pleasurable to my brain to match this song to this song and then keep them locked together. I don't know what it is. I assume it's probably something that's the same way as people find juggling to be pleasurable. It's just your brain having to do something it's not used to, and something really complex, but yet very simple. You can say it as simply as, I'm just matching this record to this record. Once you understand how it works, and once you understand the feel of how much something needs to be turned up and something else needs to be turned down, and once you get the feel for it, it really just happens without you thinking about it much. You're just sort of adjusting things on the fly and keeping them together. And when you're doing really, really well, it is so much fun. Even when you're not doing well and you're sort of all over the place, that's fun too, because sometimes you save it from going off and you guess right, it needs to speed up. And every time you do that, you're training your brain just a little bit more to be a little bit better at this. Any sort of popular music you can do this with, as long as it has stretches of just rhythm. When I play for somebody who's never seen anybody mix on turntables, they're usually disappointed by what I do because they think that it looks fake when it looks like I'm not actually doing anything when I'm sitting here going like this. Because they expect to hear wiki wiki willy wiki. You know, it's a totally different style of turntablism when they're doing all the tricks and everything. Most of the time, when I play anyway, I'm just trying to mix track A to track B to show my audience these awesome records, and I want to show pretty much the track in its entirety. Until next time, thank you very much for watching, and I hope you found this enjoyable. If you have any questions or comments, just let me know in the comments, and we'll go from there. I really thank everybody for watching, and I hope you have an awesome week. See you next week. Bye.